When my daughter-in-law stole every last cent of my $1,550 pension, leaving me to starve, I thought my life was over. But just 12 hours later, the document in the hand of the man in the luxury suit knocking on my door wasn't just going to rewrite my fate, but the fate of my greedy daughter-in-law and my cowardly son. Sometimes, revenge comes wrapped in a $12 million inheritance. Before you hear the full story of this cruel betrayal and the miracle that arrived the next morning, please subscribe to my channel and write "Justice" in the comments. Now, let's go back to that horrible day. My name is Marilyn. I'm 69 years old, and I live alone in this small, rented apartment overlooking the noisy streets of Los Angeles. My whole life, I cleaned other people's homes and offices. The ache in my knees is a souvenir of those years. The 3rd of every month was a small day of relief for me. On that day, my $1,550 pension would deposit into my account. That money might sound like a lot to you, but $800 of it went to the rent for these 4 walls I call home. With the remaining $750, bills, groceries, my blood pressure medication, sometimes I couldn't make it to the end of the month. I'd have to owe the pharmacy. That day was pension day. At the crack of dawn, I opened the banking app on my old phone. I was going to send the rent to my landlord, but when I looked at the screen, my blood ran cold. Balance, $0. I rubbed my eyes. I must have been seeing things. I looked again. 0. Not even $1. I frantically went into my account activity. And there, I saw the transaction that stabbed my heart like a knife. Account transfer, $1,550. Recipient, Kylie. Kylie, my son Justin's luxury-obsessed wife who hated me. With trembling hands, I called my son. "Justin," I said, my voice tearful. "The money is gone. My pension." Kylie took it. There was silence on the other end of the line. I knew Justin was weak-willed, but this. "Mom," he stammered. I'll talk," to Kylie. It must be a mistake. But I knew it wasn't a mistake. I hung up, and this time I called my daughter-in-law directly. When she answered, her voice was ice. "What is it, Marilyn?" "Kylie. My money. You took my pension. I have to pay my rent. Please send it back." An arrogant laugh came through the phone. "Oh, sweetie," she said mockingly. "I can do more with your pocket change than you ever could. We were looking at a new car for Justin. This will be a good down payment. Your money is more useful to me." "But what will I do? I'll starve. I'll be homeless," I screamed desperately. "That's not my problem," she said, and hung up the phone in my face. The phone slipped from my hand and fell onto the old carpet. My landlord's face flashed before my eyes. The half-empty carton of milk in the fridge. My medication. That night, I faced the biggest fear of my 69-year life, being homeless and hungry. I collapsed onto my knees and sobbed. I prayed for a miracle, but I didn't. No, that night was the darkest moment of my life. That night was the calm before the storm. And when my door knocked the next morning, that was the moment everything changed. The morning sun was filtering through my thin curtains when I heard the knock on my door. My eyes were swollen from crying all night. My body ached from sleeping in the armchair because I didn't even have the strength to go to bed. The knock came again, this time more insistent. I dragged myself to the door, wondering if it was my landlord coming to throw me out already. When I opened the door, I froze. Standing before me was a man in his late 60s, wearing an impeccably tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than my entire year's pension. His silver hair was perfectly combed, his shoes gleamed, and he carried a leather briefcase that screamed wealth. But what struck me most was his kind eyes that seemed to understand suffering. "Mrs. Marilyn Henderson?" he asked in a gentle but professional voice. I nodded, unable to speak. "My name is Charles Hamilton. I'm an attorney representing the estate of Henry Morrison. May I come in? I have some very important matters to discuss with you." Henry. My baby brother Henry. We'd lost touch over the years after he moved to New York to pursue his dreams in real estate. The last I'd heard, about 15 years ago, was that he'd done well for himself. But we'd drifted apart, the way siblings sometimes do when life pulls them in different directions. "Henry?" I whispered, my hand flying to my chest. Is he all right?" "Mr. Hamilton's expression grew solemn. I'm afraid Mr. Morrison passed away last month from a heart attack. I'm deeply sorry for your loss. The world tilted slightly. My little brother, gone. We hadn't spoken in so long, and now we never would again. Fresh tears spilled down my cheeks, mixing with the dried salt from last night's crying. Please, Mr. Hamilton said softly, may I come in? What I have to tell you is, perhaps best discussed sitting down. I stepped aside mechanically, suddenly self-conscious about my shabby apartment, my worn furniture, my poverty on full display before this obviously wealthy man. But if he noticed or judged, his face showed nothing but compassion. He sat in my threadbare armchair and opened his briefcase with a practiced click. Mrs. Henderson, your brother Henry was a very successful man. He built a real estate empire in Manhattan worth considerable money. He never married, had no children, and according to his will, which was updated just 6 months before his death, he left his entire estate to you, his only living relative. I stared at him, not comprehending. Estate? But we hadn't spoken in years. I don't understand why he would. Mr. Hamilton pulled out a letter, yellowed slightly at the edges. He left this for you. Perhaps it will explain. With shaking hands, I took the letter. Henry's handwriting, which I remembered from childhood, sprawled across the notice page. My dearest Marilyn, it began. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and I hope you can forgive me for the years of silence. The truth is, I was ashamed that I'd made my fortune while you continued to struggle, cleaning other people's homes. I saw you once, about 5 years ago, outside a building I owned in LA. You were leaving with your cleaning supplies, looking so tired, and I was arriving in my car. You didn't see me, but I saw you, and I was paralyzed by my own cowardice. I should have helped you then, should have reached out, but I told myself I'd do it later, that I'd find the right moment. I was a fool. So instead, I'm doing what I should have done years ago. Everything I built, every dollar, every property, it's all yours now. Not because I'm trying to buy forgiveness from beyond the grave, but because you deserve to finally rest, to finally live without worry. You spent your whole life taking care of others, big sister. Now let me take care of you. With all my love and regret, Henry. By the time I finished reading, I was sobbing so hard I could barely breathe. Mr. Hamilton quietly handed me a tissue from my own table. When I'd composed myself enough to look at him, he continued. Mrs. Henderson, your brother's estate, after all taxes and fees have been settled, amounts to $12,300,000. Additionally, there are 3 apartment buildings in Manhattan, a penthouse in downtown Los Angeles, and various other assets. As of this moment, you are a very wealthy woman. The words didn't make sense. They couldn't be real. Yesterday, I'd had nothing, not even my measly pension that Kylie had stolen. Today, $12 million? It was impossible. A dream, a cruel joke the universe was playing on my broken heart. I can't, I stammered. Mr. Hamilton smiled gently. It's quite real, I assure you. I have all the documentation here. We'll need your signature on several documents, and then I'll help you set up proper bank accounts, investments, everything you need. But Mrs. Henderson, there's something else your brother specified in his will. He pulled out another document. Henry left specific instructions. He wrote, and I quote, My sister Marilyn has a heart too kind for this cruel world. I worry that people will take advantage of her generosity once they learn of her inheritance. Therefore, I request that my attorney, Charles Hamilton, serve as her advisor for the first year to help her navigate her new circumstances and protect her from those who might seek to exploit her kindness. If you agree, I would be honored to fulfill your brother's wishes. I sat there in stunned silence, the weight of this impossible miracle pressing down on me. $12 million, buildings, a penthouse, words I'd never imagined would apply to my life. Mr. Hamilton gave me time to process, sitting patiently while I worked through the shock. Finally, I found my voice. Mr. Hamilton. Yesterday, my daughter-in-law stole my entire pension, all $1,550 of it. She said my money was more useful to her. I went to bed last night thinking I might end up homeless, hungry, with nowhere to turn. And now you're telling me my brother, who I haven't spoken to in 15 years, left me $12 million? Yes, ma'am, that's exactly what I'm telling you, he replied, his expression suddenly turning serious. And regarding your daughter-in-law's theft, that concerns me greatly. It's exactly the kind of behavior your brother feared. Mrs. Henderson, with your permission, I'd like to help you handle this situation properly, legally, and in a way that ensures it never happens again. Something in his tone, protective and almost paternal, made me trust him completely. What do you suggest? I asked. First, we document everything. The unauthorized transfer, the threatening phone call, all of it. Then, we set up your new accounts with maximum security so that no one, and I mean no one, can access your money but you. After that, well, how you choose to handle your family is entirely up to you, but I would strongly advise not telling anyone about this inheritance immediately. Sometimes, Mrs. Henderson, it's wise to observe how people behave when they think you have nothing before revealing that you have everything. The wisdom in his words struck me deeply. I thought about Justin, my son who'd stammered on the phone, who'd called Kylie's theft a mistake instead of defending his own mother. I thought about Kylie's mocking laugh, her casual cruelty, the way she'd dismissed my desperation as not her problem. And something inside me, something I didn't know existed, something hard and cold and angry, began to crystallize. Mr. Hamilton, I said slowly, I'd like to take your advice. I want to see exactly who my son and daughter-in-law really are before they know about any of this. He nodded approvingly. A wise decision. Now, shall we begin with the paperwork? I have several documents that need your signature, and then we'll visit my bank to set up your accounts properly. For the next 3 hours, I signed paper after paper, each signature making the impossible reality more concrete. Mr. Hamilton explained everything in detail, never patronizing, always respectful. He set up a checking account with $50,000 for immediate expenses, put $10 million into various investment accounts that would generate income, and established trusts and safeguards for the remainder. He even arranged for a financial advisor and an accountant to help manage everything. The penthouse in downtown Los Angeles, he said as we finished. It's currently vacant. Your brother kept it for when he visited the West Coast, but he hadn't been there in over a year. It's fully furnished, quite luxurious actually, and it's yours whenever you want it. However, I'd suggest keeping this apartment for now, maintaining your normal routine until you decide how you want to handle your family situation. I agreed, though the thought of staying in this cramped space when I owned a penthouse seemed absurd. By early afternoon, Mr. Side Hamilton had departed, leaving me with his business card, a folder full of documents, and a new bank card connected to an account with more money than I'd ever dreamed of possessing. I sat in my armchair, staring at the card, wondering if I'd wake up any moment to find it had all been a hallucination brought on by hunger and despair. But the card was real, solid plastic in my trembling hand. My phone rang. Justin. I stared at it for several seconds before answering. Mom, he said, and I could hear the discomfort in his voice. About yesterday, I talked to Kylie. She said she'll send the money back by the end of the week. End of the week. 4 more days without rent money, without food money, without medication money. 4 more days because his wife, the woman he'd chosen over his own mother, had decided to be generous enough to return what she'd stolen. The end of the week? I said quietly. Yes, Mom. She needs a few days to move some things around financially. You understand. I understood perfectly. I understood that my son was making excuses for a thief. I understood that he valued his wife's convenience over his mother's survival. I understood that the end of the week meant nothing, because Kylie had no intention of returning that money, and Justin was too weak to force the issue. I see, I said simply. Justin, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. If Kylie hadn't taken my money, if I'd called you yesterday and told you I was short on rent, that I needed help, would you have given it to me? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. Mom, you know things are tight for us right now. Kylie's been wanting to redecorate the house, and we're looking at new cars. I understand, I interrupted, my voice steady despite the pain blooming in my chest. Thank you for being honest, Justin. I hung up before he could say anything else. My son had just told me that his wife's desire for home decor and new cars outweighed his mother's need for shelter and food. The little boy I'd raised alone after his father died, that evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went shopping without looking at prices. I walked into the grocery store nearest to my apartment, and I filled my cart with fresh vegetables, good cuts of meat, real butter, the kind of coffee that came in bags instead of giant plastic containers, fresh bread from the bakery section, and even a small bouquet of flowers. At the checkout, when the total came to $147, an amount that once would have devastated my monthly budget, I simply handed over my new bank card without flinching. Back in my apartment, I cooked myself a real meal for the first time in months. Steak, roasted potatoes with rosemary, a fresh salad, and a glass of wine I'd bought on impulse. As I ate at my small kitchen table with my grocery store flowers in a chipped vase, I realized I was crying again. But this time, they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of gratitude for my brother's gift, tears of grief for the years we'd lost, and yes, tears of anger at the people who'd tried to kick me when I was already down. The next morning, my landlord knocked on my door. Mr. Chen was a kind man, always patient when I'd been late with rent in the past, but I could see the worry on his face. "Mrs. Henderson, the rent was due 3 days ago. I hate to pressure you, but I have my own bills." "Of course, Mr. Chen," I said warmly. "I apologize for the delay. Can I write you a check right now?" The relief on his face made my heart ache. How many times had this poor man worried about getting his rent from his struggling tenants? I wrote him a check for not just this month, but for the next 6 months in advance. His eyes widened when he saw the amount. "Mrs. Henderson, this is too much. I can't." "Please," I said firmly. "You've been patient with me so many times over the years. This is my thank you. And Mr. Chen, if you know of any other tenants in the building who are struggling, who might be in the situation I was in just a few days ago, please let me know. I'd like to help if I can." He looked at me with such confusion and curiosity, clearly wondering where this windfall had come from, but he was too polite to ask directly. "You are very kind, Mrs. Henderson. Very kind indeed. There is Mrs. Patterson on the second floor. She's raising her grandson alone, works 2 jobs. I know she's always short. I'll visit her today," I promised. After Mr. Chen left, I sat down with a notebook and began to make a list. Not a list of things I wanted to buy for myself, though there would be time for that later. No, this was a list of everyone who'd helped me over the years when I had nothing. The pharmacy that had let me pay for my medications late. The neighbor who'd shared her groceries when mine ran out. The woman at the church who'd always made sure I had a good meal after Sunday service. And yes, I made another list too. The people who'd kicked me when I was down. My son and daughter-in-law topped that list. Over the next week, I maintained my normal routine, but with a few quiet changes. I paid off Mrs. Patterson's rent for the next year and set up a small trust fund for her grandson's education. I walked into the pharmacy and paid off every outstanding balance, not just mine but for 6 other elderly customers who were behind on their payments. I donated anonymously to the church's food bank. Each act of generosity felt like healing a wound I didn't know I had, but I didn't tell anyone about my inheritance. To the world, I was still poor Marilyn, struggling on her tiny pension. And during that week, something interesting happened. Kylie called me. "Marilyn," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "I've been thinking about what happened, and I realize I might have been a bit harsh. Justin and I would love to have you over for dinner this weekend. We can talk about the money then." Talk about the money. Not return the money, not apologize for stealing from you, but talk about the money, as if it were still negotiable, still up for discussion. "That would be lovely, Kylie," I said in my meekest voice. "What day works for you?" "Saturday evening, 7 o'clock. And Marilyn, dress nicely, please. We might have some other guests, and I wouldn't want you to feel out of place." The condescension in her voice was palpable. She was telling me, a 69-year-old woman, how to dress in front of her friends, implying that I would embarrass her with my poverty. "Of course, dear," I said sweetly. "I'll do my best." After I hung up, I called Mr. Hamilton. "The dinner is set for Saturday," I told him. "Excellent," he replied. "Are you ready for this, Mrs. Henderson? Once we begin, there's no going back." "I'm ready," I said, and I meant it. "Good, then let's discuss the plan." Saturday evening arrived with unusual clarity, one of those perfect Los Angeles nights where the smog clears and you can actually see stars. I stood in my bedroom, looking at two outfits laid out on my bed. One was my usual wardrobe, a simple department store dress that had seen better days, worn flats, and my old purse. The other was something entirely different, something I'd purchased that afternoon with Mr. Hamilton's encouragement. Remember, he told me over the phone. Sometimes the best revenge is simply showing people who you really are. I chose the second outfit. When I stepped out of my building at 6:30, the town car Mr. Hamilton had arranged was already waiting. The driver, a professional woman named Marie, greeted me warmly and opened the door. As we drove through the streets toward Justin and Kylie's house in the suburbs, I caught my reflection in the Kylie window. The woman looking back at me was someone I barely recognized. My hair, usually just pulled back in a simple bun, had been professionally styled that afternoon. The dress I wore was elegant but understated, deep navy blue with a classic cut that whispered wealth rather than shouting it. The shoes were comfortable but clearly expensive, and around my neck was a simple strand of pearls that had belonged to my mother, retrieved from storage that week. But the biggest change wasn't in my clothing, it was in my eyes. For the first time in years, I didn't look defeated. We arrived at Justin and Kylie's house at exactly 7 o'clock. It was a nice suburban home. Nothing extravagant, but comfortable, the kind of place that required 2 decent incomes to maintain. I knew they were stretched thin financially, not because they didn't earn enough, but because Kylie's taste far exceeded their means. The driveway already had 2 other cars parked in it, so there were other guests, just as Kylie had mentioned. Interesting. I rang the doorbell and heard Kylie's heels clicking across the hardwood floor. When she opened the door, her face went through a remarkable journey of expressions in about 3 seconds. First, confusion at not recognizing me immediately, then recognition, then shock, then something that looked almost like fear, before she composed herself into a tight smile. "Marilyn," she said slowly, "you look different." "Thank you, dear," I said pleasantly, walking past her into the house. "You said to dress nicely, so I did my best." The living room held 2 other couples, friends of Justin and Kylie's who I'd met briefly at their wedding. They looked up as I entered, and I saw the same confusion in their faces. They'd been told Justin's poor, struggling mother was coming to dinner, and here I was looking like I'd just stepped out of a country club. Justin appeared from the kitchen, and his jaw literally dropped. "Mom, is that you?" "Hello, darling," I said, kissing his cheek. "Thank you for inviting me." The dinner started awkwardly. Kylie kept shooting me suspicious glances, clearly trying to figure out where I'd gotten the money for my outfit and haircut. The other guests made polite small talk, but I could feel the questions hanging in the air. Finally, during the main course, Kylie couldn't contain herself any longer. "So, Marilyn," she said with that fake sweet tone, "you're looking quite prosperous tonight. Did something good happen? Win the lottery, perhaps?" She laughed at her own joke, and her friends joined in politely. "Actually," I said, setting down my fork and looking directly at her, "something wonderful did happen. My brother passed away recently and left me his estate." The table went silent. Justin's fork clattered onto his plate. Kylie's smile froze on her face. "Your brother?" Justin said weakly. "You never mentioned you were in contact with Uncle Henry." "I wasn't," I replied calmly. "We'd lost touch years ago. But, apparently, he thought of me at the end. He left me quite a substantial inheritance." I watched Kylie's mind work, saw the calculations happening behind her eyes. She was trying to figure out how much money we were talking about, whether it was enough to matter, whether she needed to adjust her attitude. "How substantial are we talking?" she asked, trying to sound casual and failing miserably. "Enough," I said simply. "Enough that I won't have to worry about money anymore. In fact, I've already been able to pay off quite a few debts and help several people who've been kind to me over the years." "That's wonderful, Mom," Justin said, and I could hear both genuine happiness and something else in his voice. Relief, perhaps, that he wouldn't have to feel guilty about his poor mother anymore. "How much exactly did he leave you?" Kylie pressed, abandoning all pretense of subtlety. The other guests looked uncomfortable, clearly recognizing how inappropriate the question was. "Kylie," I said, gently, "that's rather personal, don't you think? But I will say this, it's enough that I can afford to be generous with people who've been kind to me, and enough that I can afford to be very particular about people who haven't been." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Kylie's face flushed red. What's that supposed to mean? It means, I said, my voice still pleasant but with an edge of steel underneath, that I haven't forgotten about my pension money that went missing last week. $1,550 transferred from my account to yours without my permission. I believe the term for that is theft. Justin's face went white. The other guests suddenly became very interested in their dinner plates. Kylie's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Now wait just a minute, Kylie sputtered, her composure cracking completely. That was a mistake, a banking error. I was going to return it. Really? I asked, pulling out my phone. Because I have the text message you sent me right here where you said, and I quote, "Your money is more useful to me. That's not my problem. Should I read the whole conversation to your guests?" The color drained from Kylie's face. Justin looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. The other two couples were now staring openly, the polite fiction of ignoring the drama completely abandoned. Furthermore, I continued, my voice still calm but carrying a weight it had never held before, I've spent this past week watching and waiting to see what you would do, whether you'd return the money you stole, whether you'd apologize, whether my son would find the backbone to stand up for his mother. And do you know what happened instead? Nothing. Absolutely nothing until you invited me to this dinner, and I suspect that invitation only came because you were starting to worry that I might cause problems for you. Mom, Justin tried to interrupt, but I held up my hand. Let me finish, Justin. For 69 years, I've been quiet. I've been meek. I've let people walk over me because I thought that's what good people did. I thought that's what good mothers did. But my brother Henry's gift didn't just give me money. It gave me clarity. It showed me who people really are when they think you have nothing to offer them. I turned to address the entire table. Last week, when my daughter-in-law stole my pension, I called my son for help. I was facing homelessness, starvation, and I called my child, the boy I raised alone, the boy I worked 3 jobs to put through college. And do you know what he told me? He told me that he and Kylie were looking at new cars and redecorating their house, so things were tight for them. One of the other women at the table gasped softly. Even in this era of broken families and casual cruelty, a son refusing to help his desperate mother was shocking. But here's the beautiful thing about sudden wealth, I continued, looking directly at Kylie. It gives you options. It gives you power. And most importantly, it gives you the ability to see who people truly are. So let me tell you both what's going to happen. First, Kylie, you will return every cent of my pension money by Monday, along with a written apology. Not because I need that $1,500 anymore, but because you need to face what you did. And if I don't? Kylie spat, her true nature fully exposed now, all pretense of civility abandoned. Then I'll file charges for theft and fraud, I said simply. My attorney assures me we have an excellent case. Bank transfers leave paper trails, and your text messages, which I've backed up in multiple places, show clear intent and admission of guilt. You could face jail time, and at the very least, you'd have a criminal record that would follow you forever. Kylie's face contorted with rage and fear. You wouldn't dare. I'm Justin's wife. I'm family. Family, I repeated softly. You know what family doesn't do, Kylie. Family doesn't steal from a 69-year-old woman's pension. Family doesn't mock her when she's desperate. Family doesn't leave her to starve while shopping for luxury cars. You taught me what you think family means, so now I'm teaching you what consequences mean. I turned to my son, and my voice softened slightly, though the steel remained underneath. Justin, I love you. You're my son, and nothing will ever change that. But I'm deeply disappointed in the man you've become. You've let your wife steal from me. You've made excuses for her cruelty. And when I needed you most, you chose throw pillows and car payments over your mother's survival. That's a choice you made, and it's a choice you'll have to live with. Mom, I didn't know it was that bad, Justin said weakly, tears forming in his eyes. Yes, you did, I replied gently. I told you I couldn't pay my rent, that I might end up homeless. You knew exactly how bad it was. You just didn't want to deal with it because dealing with it would mean standing up to your wife, and that was too uncomfortable for you. The dinner table was completely silent now, except for the sound of Kylie's rapid, angry breathing. This is insane, she finally said. All this drama over $1,500 when apparently you're some kind of millionaire now? Why does it even matter? Because, I said, standing up from the table, It mattered 3 days ago when I thought that $1,500 was all I had in the world. It mattered when I went to bed hungry because I couldn't afford food. It mattered when I stared at eviction notices and wondered if I'd die on the streets. The amount of money I have now doesn't change what you did to me when you thought I was powerless. That's what you don't understand, Kylie. This isn't about money anymore. This is about character. And yours has been found severely lacking. I picked up my purse and looked at the shocked faces around the table. Thank you for dinner. Though I notice I'm the only one who hasn't been able to eat much of it. The tension tends to affect the appetite. Justin, I'll expect to hear from you soon, when you've had time to think about what kind of man you want to be. Kylie, my attorney will be in touch about the stolen funds. And to your friends, I apologize that you had to witness this family drama. I'm sure Kylie will have some interesting story to tell you after I leave, but now you know the truth. I walked toward the door, my head high, my steps steady. Behind me, I heard Kylie explode. This is ridiculous. Justin, are you going to let your mother threaten me like this? After everything I've done for this family? Everything you've done? Justin's voice was quiet, and when I glanced back, I saw him staring at his wife as if seeing her for the first time. What exactly have you done, Kylie? Besides spend our money, steal from my mother, and turn me into someone I don't recognize anymore? I didn't stay to hear the rest of the argument that erupted. I walked out, to the waiting town car, where Marie was ready with the door open. As we pulled away from the house, I could see the lights blazing in the windows and shadows moving frantically inside. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. Justin calling, then Kylie, then Justin again. I turned the phone off and watched the suburbs give way to the city lights. The following Monday morning, I sat in Mr. Hamilton's luxurious downtown office, a space of leather chairs and mahogany furniture that smelled of old money and older wisdom. He poured me tea from a delicate china service, treating me not like a charity case or a confused elderly woman, but like the client I'd become, someone worthy of respect and careful attention. You handled Saturday evening perfectly, he said with an approving nod. Though I suspect the aftermath has been somewhat intense. 67 phone calls, 43 text messages, and 12 voicemails, I replied, pulling out my phone. All since Saturday night. Justin is devastated. Apologetic. Begging for forgiveness. Kylie alternates between rage and panic, threatening legal action 1 minute and pleading for mercy the next. And have you responded to any of them? Mr. Hamilton asked. Not yet, I said. I wanted to talk to you first. Mr. Hamilton, the truth is, I don't want to destroy my son or even my daughter-in-law. I'm angry and I'm hurt, but I'm not cruel. What I want is for them to understand what they did, to really face it, and then maybe, possibly, we can find a way forward. Mr. Hamilton smiled, the kind of smile that suggested he'd hoped I'd say exactly that. Mrs. Henderson, may I tell you a story about your brother Henry? I nodded, and he continued. About 10 years ago, Henry's business partner tried to cheat him out of $2 million. It was a complex scheme, and by the time Henry discovered it, the man had already siphoned off about half that amount. Everyone expected Henry to destroy him, to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law, to make an example of him. What did he do instead? I asked, leaning forward. He sat down with the man and his family and laid out all the evidence. He showed them the prison time the partner was facing, the ruin that would come to his wife and children, the complete destruction of everything they'd built. And then he made an offer. The partner would pay back every cent over time, would undergo therapy for his gambling addiction, which was what had driven the theft in the first place, and would work for Henry for 5 years at a reduced salary until the debt was cleared. If he succeeded, Henry would give him a recommendation and help him start fresh. If he failed, Henry would prosecute. Did he succeed? I asked. He did, Mr. Hamilton said, and today, that man runs a successful business helping other people overcome gambling addiction, and he credits your brother with saving his life. Henry believed that most people weren't evil, they were weak, and weakness could be strengthened if someone was willing to invest in the process. I think you have the same belief about your son. Tears pricked my eyes. Henry, my little brother who I'd lost touch with, who I'd thought had forgotten about me, had carried that same compassion I'd always tried to maintain. So what do you suggest? I asked. Mr. Hamilton pulled out several documents. I suggest we create a very specific path forward. First, Kylie returns the stolen money and provides a written apology, as you demanded. That's non-negotiable and will happen this week or we file charges. Second, we set up a meeting with Justin and Kylie where we lay out clearly what their behavior has cost in terms of your relationship, your trust, and your respect. And then, I prompted, and then you offer them a choice. They can walk away, accepting that their actions have consequences and their relationship with you is severed, perhaps forever. Or they can take a different path, one that requires real work, real change, and real accountability. I'd suggest family therapy, genuine amends not just to you but to others they've wronged, and a probationary period where they prove through actions, not words, that they're worthy of being in your life. What if they choose wrong? I asked. What if they take the easy path? Or what if they fake the hard path but don't really change? Then you'll know, Mr. Hamilton said simply, and you'll have your answer about who they truly are. But Mrs. Henderson, you'll also know that you gave them every chance, that you didn't let bitterness or revenge drive your choices, and that you honored the kind of person your brother believed you to be. We spent the next hour drafting a plan that felt both just and merciful, one that demanded accountability but offered redemption. By the time I left Mr. Hamilton's office, I felt lighter somehow, as if a weight I'd been carrying for years, maybe even decades, had finally lifted. That afternoon, Kylie returned my pension money. Not by transfer, but by showing up at my apartment with a cashier's check and an envelope. She looked terrible, her usual perfect appearance disheveled, her eyes red from crying, her hands shaking as she held out the envelope. "The check is for the full amount," she said, her voice hoarse. "And this is the written apology you demanded. I know it probably won't be enough. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I wrote it anyway because you deserve at least that much." I took the envelope but didn't open it. "Come in, Kylie," I said quietly. She looked shocked, as if she'd expected me to slam the door in her face. Inside my small apartment, she perched nervously on the edge of my old sofa, looking so out of place in her designer clothes among my worn furniture. "I need to tell you something," she started, but I held up my hand. "Before you say anything, I want you to understand something clearly. What you did wasn't just theft, Kylie. It was cruelty. You took money from someone you knew was desperate, someone who'd never done anything to harm you, and you mocked her pain. That reveals something about your character that's deeply troubling." "I know," she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I know. And I've been awake every night since then, seeing your face when I said those horrible things to you, imagining you going hungry, imagining you being thrown out of your home, and knowing I did that to you. I don't have an excuse, Marilyn. I was selfish and cruel, and I took advantage of your kindness because I thought I could get away with it." I sat down across from her, studying this woman my son had married, trying to see past the designer clothes and the carefully maintained appearance to the person underneath. "Why, Kylie? Help me understand why you would do such a thing." She was silent for a long moment, and when she finally spoke, her voice was so quiet I had to lean forward to hear it. "Because I was scared," she said. "I'm always scared. Scared that I'm not good enough. Scared that Justin will wake up one day and realize he married beneath him. Scared that I'll end up like my mother, living in a trailer park, working at a gas station, until the day she dies. So I spend money I don't have on things I don't need, trying to build this perfect life, this perfect image, and I'm drowning in debt and terror every single day." She looked up at me, her mascara running, her perfect facade completely crumbled. "When I saw your pension deposit in our joint account, Justin had added you as an external account months ago in case you ever needed emergency help. I didn't see my mother-in-law's survival money. I saw a down payment on a car that would make me look successful, a car that would prove I'd made it, that I wasn't trash from a trailer park anymore. I took it, and I told myself it didn't matter because you were old and you'd figure it out somehow, and I'm so ashamed I can't even breathe." The revelation hit me hard. I'd been so focused on my own pain, my own struggle, that I hadn't considered that maybe Kylie was fighting her own demons, making terrible choices out of her own fear and desperation. It didn't excuse what she'd done, not even close, but it explained it, and explanation was the first step toward understanding. "Kylie," I said gently, "having come from poverty isn't something to be ashamed of. I've been poor my entire life until last week, and while it's been hard, it's also taught me what matters and what doesn't. Things don't make you worthy. Money doesn't make you valuable. Character does. Kindness does. How you treat people when you have power over them, that's what defines you. I failed that test, she said miserably. You did. I agreed. You failed it spectacularly. But here's what my brother taught me. Even from beyond the grave, everyone deserves a chance at redemption if they're truly willing to work for it. The question is, are you willing to do the work? Real work, not just apologies and tears, but actual change in how you think and act and treat people? She looked at me with something like hope flickering in her eyes. What kind of work? Over the next hour, I laid out the path Mr. Hamilton and I had designed. Therapy to deal with her issues around money and self-worth. Volunteering at a women's shelter where she could see real poverty and learn empathy. A structured plan to address the debt she and Justin had accumulated. And most importantly, a complete reset of her relationship with me, starting from zero, earning back trust through consistent, sustained good behavior. I'll do it, she said immediately. All of it, whatever it takes. Don't answer so quickly, I warned her. This isn't a quick fix. This is months, maybe years of work. There will be times when it's uncomfortable, when you'll want to quit, when you'll resent me for demanding so much. You need to think carefully about whether you're really willing to commit to this. I don't need to think, Kylie said, her voice stronger now. I've spent the last few days thinking I'd destroyed everything, that I'd go to jail, that I'd lose Justin, that I'd become exactly what I've always been terrified of becoming, a bad person, a criminal, trash. You're offering me a way out, a way to be better, and I'm grabbing it with both hands. Please, Marilyn, please give me this chance. I saw something in her eyes then, something genuine beneath the desperation, a real desire to change, to grow, to become someone worthy of the second chance she was being offered. All right, I said. But understand this clearly. One slip, one moment of falling back into your old patterns, and we're done. I'm too old and have been through too much to waste energy on people who won't do the work to be better. I understand, she said. Thank you. Thank you so much. After Kylie left, I called Justin and asked him to meet me the next day at a coffee shop near his work. When he arrived, he looked as wrecked as his wife had, exhausted and emotionally raw. We ordered coffee and sat outside in the weak morning sun, and I told him everything I'd told Kylie, everything about the path forward and the work it would require. But Mom, he said when I'd finished, what about you? What about your inheritance, your new life? Are you going to help us with our debt, with our struggles? And there it was. The question I'd been waiting for. The test of whether my son had learned anything from this nightmare. No, I said simply. I'm not going to pay off your debts or make your life easier financially. Do you know why? He shook his head, looking confused and a little hurt. Because you and Kylie created those debts, making choices to live beyond your means, choices to value appearances over stability, choices to take from others rather than face your own problems. If I swoop in and fix everything with money, you won't learn anything. You'll just come to see me as a bank, and the next time things get tough, you'll be right back where you started. I love you too much to do that to you. So, what will you do? He asked quietly. I'll be here, I said. I'll be your mother. I'll support you emotionally. I'll have dinner with you once you and Kylie have done the work to earn back my trust. I'll be in your life if you want me there. But I won't be your solution. You have to be your own solution. You have to fix what you broke, not with my money, but with your own efforts. Justin was quiet for a long time, staring into his coffee cup. Finally, he looked up at me, and I saw tears in his eyes. I've been a terrible son, he said. I let you down when you needed me most. I chose comfort over courage, and I'm so ashamed I can barely look at you. Then don't be a terrible son anymore, I said simply. Be better. It's not complicated, Justin. It's hard, but it's not complicated. Treat people with kindness. Stand up for what's right even when it's uncomfortable. Value character over appearances. Be the man I raised you to be, the man I know is still in there somewhere underneath the bad choices. Can you forgive me? He asked, his voice breaking. Eventually, I said honestly. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually, If you show me through your actions that you've learned from this, that you've grown. Forgiveness isn't something you demand, Justin. It's something you earn. So earn it. 3 months passed after that difficult conversation with my son, and I spent that time building a new life while watching Justin and Kylie work on building new versions of themselves. I moved out of my cramped apartment and into the penthouse Henry had left me, a stunning space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Los Angeles. Every morning, I'd wake up to sunlight streaming through those windows, and I'd think of my brother, wishing I could thank him, wishing I could tell him how his gift had not just changed my life, but potentially saved my son's soul. Mr. Hamilton introduced me to a whole new world of charity work and philanthropy. I established a foundation in Henry's name, focused on helping elderly people in poverty, people just like I'd been mere months before. We paid rent for those facing eviction, covered medical expenses, provided grocery assistance, and offered dignity to people who'd been forgotten by society. Every person we helped felt like honoring both my brother and the woman I'd been before the inheritance found me. One afternoon in late autumn, I was at the foundation office reviewing grant applications when Mr. Hamilton knocked on my door with an unusual expression on his face. "Mrs. Henderson, there's someone here I'd like you to meet. His story is quite remarkable, and I think it might interest you personally." He led me to the conference room where a man in his early 40s sat with a young girl, maybe 9 or 10 years old. The man looked exhausted, worn down by life in a way I recognized immediately. His clothes were clean but shabby, his hands rough from manual labor, and his eyes held that particular haunted look of someone barely keeping their head above water. The little girl beside him had dark curly hair and her father's serious eyes. But there was also something bright and hopeful about her, as if she hadn't yet learned that the world could be cruel. "Mrs. Henderson, this is Mateo Rodriguez and his daughter Sophia," Mr. Hamilton said. "Mateo, this is Marilyn Henderson, the founder of this foundation." Mateo stood quickly, almost knocking over his chair in his haste, and extended his hand. "Mrs. Henderson, thank you so much for seeing us. I know you must be very busy, and I promise I won't take much of your time." "Please, sit," I said warmly, taking a seat across from them. "Mr. Hamilton said your story was remarkable. I'd love to hear it." Mateo glanced at his daughter, and something passed between them, some understanding or shared pain that made my heart ache. "Mrs. Henderson, 4 months ago, my wife Elena died from cancer. We didn't have good insurance, and the medical bills bankrupted us. We lost our house, lost everything, and now Sophia and I are living in my truck, trying to get back on our feet." Sophia sat very still beside her father, her small hands folded in her lap, and I could see she'd had to grow up far too fast, had seen far too much hardship for someone so young. "I'm so sorry for your loss," I said softly. "Losing someone you love is hard enough without the added burden of financial devastation." "Thank you," Mateo said, his voice thick with emotion. "Elena was everything to us. She was a teacher, she loved her students, she loved Sophia more than anything in the world, and watching her die while knowing we couldn't afford the treatments that might have saved her, that's something I'll carry with me forever." "Daddy," Sophia said quietly, putting her small hand on her father's arm, and the gesture was so tender, so full of love and concern, that I felt tears prick my eyes. Mateo took a deep breath and continued, "I work construction, whatever jobs I can find, and Sophia has been amazing. She never complains about living in the truck. She does her homework at the library. She's so brave and strong. But Mrs. Henderson, winter is coming, and I'm terrified. I'm terrified that I can't keep her safe, that I'm failing her the way I feel like I failed Elena." "You didn't fail your wife," I said firmly. "The system failed her, and the system failed you. Medical care shouldn't bankrupt families, and grief shouldn't come with eviction notices. What happened to you is not your fault, Mateo." Mr. Hamilton said, "Your foundation might be able to help us," Mateo continued, hope and fear warring in his voice. "Maybe with first month's rent on an apartment, help with Sophia's school supplies. I'm not asking for charity forever, Mrs. Henderson. I just need a hand up, a chance to get stable again, and I swear I'll pay it forward someday when I'm back on my feet." I looked at this proud man, so clearly devastated by circumstances beyond his control, trying so hard to maintain his dignity while asking for help. I looked at his daughter, so young but so strong, supporting her father even as she needed support herself. And I saw myself. I saw the person I'd been just a few months ago, desperate and afraid, saved by an inheritance I'd never expected. I saw Henry, reaching out from beyond the grave to help his sister, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. "Mr. Hamilton," I said, "could you give us a few minutes alone, please?" He nodded and left the room, closing the door quietly behind him. I turned back to Matteo and Sophia and smiled. "Can I tell you a story?" They both nodded, and I shared my tale. I told them about being poor my whole life, about my son and daughter-in-law, about my pension being stolen, about the darkest night of my life when I thought I might end up homeless. And I told them about Mr. Hamilton knocking on my door the next morning with news of Henry's inheritance. "Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses." Sophia's eyes grew wider as I spoke, and Matteo listened with an intensity that suggested he understood every word on a level most people couldn't. When I finished, there was silence in the room, broken only by the soft hum of the air conditioning and the distant sounds of the city below. "Mrs. Henderson," Matteo said finally, his voice barely above a whisper, "why are you telling us this?" "Because I want you to understand something very important," I replied, leaning forward. 6 months ago, I was you. I was desperate, terrified, convinced that I'd failed at life, that I had nothing left to offer the world. And then something miraculous happened, not because I deserved it or earned it, but simply because someone who loved me wanted to make sure I'd be okay after they were gone. My brother gave me a gift that changed everything, and now I have the opportunity to be that miracle for someone else. I pulled out a folder that Mr. Hamilton had prepared earlier. "Matteo, Sophia, I'm not going to give you first month's rent. I'm going to do something much bigger than that. This foundation is going to purchase a modest 3-bedroom house for you, in a good neighborhood with good schools. The house will be in both your names, mortgage-free. You'll only need to pay property taxes and utilities. Additionally, we'll set up a trust fund for Sophia's education, from elementary school all the way through college. And Matteo, we have connections with construction companies who are looking for skilled, reliable workers with benefits and health insurance." Matteo's face went completely white, tears streaming down his face. Sophia had buried her face in her father's shoulder. "Why?" Matteo choked out. "Why would you do this for us? You don't even know us." "I know enough," I said. "I know that you're a father who loves his daughter. I know that you've faced terrible tragedy with dignity and courage. And most importantly, I know what it feels like to be where you are. And I know what it feels like to be saved by someone's generosity." Sophia lifted her head and looked at me with those serious eyes. "Mrs. Henderson," she said in a small, clear voice, "my mama used to tell me that angels don't always have wings. Sometimes they just have kind hearts. I think you're an angel." My own tears spilled over then, and I reached across the table to take her small hand in mine. "Sweetheart, I'm not an angel. I'm just an old woman who was given a gift and who wants to share it. Your mama sounds like she was a very wise woman." "She was the best," Sophia said simply. "She told me that even when things are dark, there's always light somewhere if you keep looking. Daddy and I have been looking for so long, and now we found you." The next few weeks were a flurry of activity. We found them a charming 3-bedroom bungalow in a quiet neighborhood with an excellent elementary school just 3 blocks away. It had a small backyard where Sophia could play, and it was in a community known for being welcoming and safe. The day we handed Matteo the keys, he kept saying "thank you" over and over, as if those 2 words could possibly encompass everything he was feeling. Sophia ran through the house calling out discoveries. "Daddy, this room could be mine. And look, there's a tree in the backyard. We could build a swing." "Mrs. Henderson," Matteo said when Sophia was exploring the backyard, "this isn't just a house to us. This is Sophia getting to be a kid again. This is me being able to look my daughter in the eye and tell her that everything's going to be okay and actually believe it. I will never be able to repay you for this, but I promise you I will spend the rest of my life paying it forward." "That's all I ask," I said. "Someday, when you're stable and secure, help someone else who's where you are now. That's how we honor the people who help us, by becoming helpers ourselves." We furnished the house comfortably, made sure Sophia had everything she needed for school, and connected Matteo with a construction company that hired him immediately. Within a month, they had health insurance, stable income, and most importantly, they had hope. But something else happened during this time. Matteo, Sophia, and I became real friends. Not just benefactor and recipients, but people who genuinely cared about each other. Sophia started calling me Abuela Marilyn, and she'd come over to my penthouse for afternoon tea where she'd tell me about school and her dreams. Mateo would visit the foundation office just to talk, to share how things were going, to offer his perspective on other families we were helping. Around this same time, Justin and Kylie had been doing the work I'd asked of them. Kylie had been attending therapy twice a week and volunteering at a women's shelter every Saturday. She'd sent me updates documenting her struggles with her own selfishness and materialism. Justin had taken a second job to help pay down their debts without asking me for money, and he'd been attending therapy too, working through his tendency to avoid conflict. They'd sold Kylie's luxury car and bought a modest, used vehicle. Small changes, but they added up to something real. 3 months after our confrontation, I finally agreed to have dinner with them at a neutral restaurant. They arrived early, both looking nervous. We sat down, and Kylie spoke first, her voice steady but soft. "Marilyn, I was cruel to you in a way that's unforgivable, and I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know that you changed my life. You could have destroyed me, but instead, you gave me a path to become better, and I'm taking that path every single day." She showed me pictures from the women's shelter. "These women are me, or they're who I could have been. They've lost everything, and they're fighting so hard to build it back. Every time I'm there, I remember how close I came to losing everything too. It's changed how I see everything, Marilyn. It's changed who I am." Justin reached across the table. "Mom, I've had to face the fact that I was okay with my mother suffering as long as it didn't inconvenience me. That's a hard truth to swallow. I'm working every day to become someone you can be proud of again." "I never stopped being proud of you," I said quietly. "I was disappointed, hurt, angry, yes. But Justin, you're my son. The question was never whether I loved you. The question was whether you were willing to become better." We talked for hours that night, really talked, deep, honest dialogue about pain and forgiveness and what it means to be a family. I told them about Mateo and Sophia, about how helping them had helped me heal. "I want you to meet them," I said. "I think it would be good for all of you." A week later, I arranged a Sunday afternoon gathering at my penthouse. The initial introductions were stilted and uncomfortable. But then Sophia broke the ice in the way only a child can. She walked right up to Justin and said, "You're Abuela Marilyn's son? She talks about you all the time. She says you're working really hard to be better, just like my daddy worked really hard to take care of me when we lived in the truck. I think it's cool when people work hard to be better." Justin's eyes filled with tears, and he knelt down to Sophia's level. "Thank you for saying that. You're right. I am working hard to be better. Your dad is lucky to have such a smart, kind daughter." We spent the afternoon together, and slowly, the walls came down. Mateo and Justin discovered they both loved baseball. Kylie asked Sophia about school and ended up genuinely engaged in the girl's descriptions of her favorite teacher. I watched these people I cared about connecting with each other, and I felt some final piece of hurt and anger letting go, making room for hope. That night, after everyone had gone, I thought about miracles. Henry's inheritance had saved me. Finding Mateo and Sophia at exactly the moment when they needed help, and I needed to help someone. Justin and Kylie's genuine transformation. Sometimes, the greatest miracles aren't supernatural interventions, but rather the human capacity for compassion, forgiveness, and grace. My phone buzzed with texts. From Justin. "Mom, thank you for today. Meeting Mateo and Sophia helped me understand what we put you through. I'm going to spend the rest of my life being the son you deserve. I love you." From Sophia. "Abuela Marilyn, thank you for the best day. I prayed tonight and thanked God for you. Mama would have liked you." From Kylie. "Meeting Sophia today broke my heart in the best way. She has so little, yet she's so full of joy. Thank you for showing me what grace looks like." I sat on my sofa and cried tears of release, letting go of the last bits of bitterness, making space for whatever came next. The next morning, I called Mr. Hamilton with a new purpose. "I want to expand," I told him. "I want to create a program specifically for families like Mateo and Sophia's, families devastated by medical debt and loss, housing assistance, grief counseling, job placement, education support, everything they need to rebuild their lives." Mr. Hamilton smiled. "Your brother would be so proud of you." When he set up this inheritance, I don't think even he imagined how transformative it would be. That's the thing about miracles, I said. They ripple outward. Henry's love saved me, and now I get to save others, and hopefully those people will help even more people. It's like dropping a stone in a pond and watching the circles expand forever. We designed the program and decided to call it Elena's Light in honor of Matteo's late wife. Matteo cried when I told him and insisted on being involved in the program's development, bringing the perspective of someone who'd lived through the nightmare we were trying to prevent for others. 6 months after that horrible day when Kylie stole my pension, I hosted a celebration at my penthouse. Not a celebration of wealth, but of transformation, of second chances, of the miraculous capacity human beings have to change and grow. Everyone who mattered was there. Justin and Kylie arrived together, and the changes in them went beyond surface level. They'd paid off significant debt, simplified their life, and rebuilt their relationship on honesty and respect rather than appearances. Matteo and Sofia came bearing homemade tamales, Elena's recipe. Sofia had grown taller, more confident, blooming in the security of stable housing. She'd made honor roll and joined the science club. Mr. Hamilton was there too, the man who'd knocked on my door that morning and changed everything. He'd become more than my attorney, he'd become my friend. I'd also invited other families Elena's Light had helped, families facing homelessness and hopelessness, until the foundation stepped in. Margaret, a widow whose husband's cancer treatment had bankrupted them, now living in a small house with her 2 teenage sons. The Chen family, who'd lost their restaurant to medical debt, now back on their feet with proper care for their daughter. As I looked around my home filled with these beautiful, resilient people, I felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "Can I have everyone's attention?" I called out. 6 months ago, I was a completely different person, living a completely different life. I was poor, desperate, alone, and convinced that I had nothing left to offer the world. My own family had betrayed me. I faced homelessness, and I went to bed one night, thinking my life was over. I saw Justin flinch, saw Kylie's hand reach out to take his. But then something miraculous happened. My brother Henry left me an inheritance that changed everything. Not just the money, but his final message to me. His reminder that I deserved rest, care, life without worry. That message gave me back my sense of worth, possibility, and purpose. I looked at Matteo and Sofia. And then I met Matteo and Sofia, and I realized the miracle Henry gave me wasn't just for me. It was for everyone I could reach, everyone who needed what I'd needed, someone to believe in them, someone to give them a chance to rebuild. Elena's Light has now helped 47 families, I continued. 47 families facing medical bankruptcy and homelessness who now have stable housing, health care, hope, and futures. That's Henry's love multiplied 47 times. That's what miracles look like when we share them. I turned to Justin and Kylie. I also want to talk about another kind of miracle. The miracle of redemption. 6 months ago, my son and daughter-in-law hurt me deeply. But they did something remarkable. They didn't just apologize. They changed. They did the hard work of facing their flaws and rebuilding their characters. Today, I can say I'm proud of my son not in spite of what happened, but because of what he's done since then. Justin and Kylie were crying, released from months of guilt by those words of genuine forgiveness. Redemption is possible, I said firmly. People can change. Relationships can heal. But it requires courage, honesty, and sustained effort. You can't just say sorry. You have to become someone new, someone better. Justin and Kylie did that work, and I'm honored to have them back in my life fully. Sofia's small voice spoke up. Abuela Marilyn, my mama used to say that miracles are just God's way of reminding us that love is more powerful than anything else. I think she'd say that you're a miracle, and that means love is winning. The simple words from a 10-year-old child cut through everything and got right to the heart of it. Love was winning. Your mama was absolutely right, sweetheart, I said. Love is winning, and we all get to be part of that victory. We spent the evening eating, talking, laughing. I watched Justin and Kylie talking with Matteo. I watched Sofia showing her butterfly drawings to Margaret's sons. I watched Mr. Hamilton planning the foundation's next phase, and I realized something profound. This was my real inheritance. Not the $12 million, not the properties, not the security. My real inheritance was this: The opportunity to be part of other people's stories, to help write happy endings, to transform my pain into purpose. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and I stood alone, looking out at the city lights, my phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Henderson? An unfamiliar woman's voice said. My name is Dr. Patricia Vasquez. I'm a social worker at County Hospital. A patient gave me your foundation's information. Carmen Reyes, 43, just finished cancer treatment, about to be evicted because medical bills bankrupted her. She has 3 children who might end up in foster care if we can't find help. I know it's late and presumptuous, but Elena's light came up as a possibility. I listened to the familiar story, one I'd heard dozens of times now, one I'd lived myself. A good person destroyed by a medical system that treated healthcare as commodity rather than right. Dr. Vasquez, I said calmly, tell Carmen Reyes that help is coming. Have her call the foundation Monday morning. She's not going to lose her children. She's not going to be homeless. Tell her that someone who understands is going to make sure she has a chance to rebuild. The relief in Dr. Vasquez's voice was palpable. Thank you, Mrs. Henderson. Thank you so much. After I hung up, I stood there thinking about Carmen Reyes, who I hadn't met yet, who was about to discover that miracles can come from unexpected places. I thought about the 47 families we'd already helped, and now 48. I thought about all the families still out there, struggling, not knowing help might be around the corner. And I thought about my brother Henry, who died alone, carrying regret about our lost connection. Thank you, little brother, I whispered to the city below. Thank you for believing I deserved better. Thank you for giving me not just money but purpose. I promise I'm using your gift well. I promise I'm making every dollar count. I promise I'm turning your guilt into hope and healing for people who need it. Somewhere out there, Carmen Reyes was probably awake, terrified about her children's future, convinced she'd failed them. She didn't know yet that Monday morning would change everything. She didn't know about the miracle already in motion, about the elderly woman in a downtown penthouse who'd once been exactly where she was and who'd decided to make sure others didn't have to stay in that dark place alone. I smiled and started making notes about Carmen's case, even though it was late. Because that's what you do when you've been given a miracle. You don't just accept it and move on. You pay it forward, you multiply it. You turn one miracle into dozens and then hundreds. You become the knock on someone else's door, the unexpected voice saying, help is here. You're not alone. You're going to be okay. My daughter-in-law stole my $1,500 pension and left me to starve. The next morning, a lawyer knocked on my door with news of a $12 million inheritance. And now, 6 months later, I'm the one knocking on doors, delivering miracles, proving that sometimes revenge isn't about destruction. It's about becoming so filled with grace and purpose that the people who hurt you can't help but see their own smallness reflected in your bigness. Kylie had said my money was more useful to her. She was wrong. My money was most useful when it stopped being about me entirely and started being about love, about grace, about second chances, and the stubborn, beautiful insistence that no one should have to face their darkest moment alone. That's what my brother's inheritance really bought. Not penthouses or security or comfort, though it bought all those things too. It bought me the privilege of being someone's miracle, someone's answered prayer, someone's evidence that good still exists in the world. As I headed to bed, I passed the framed photo of Henry from 30 years ago, young and hopeful and full of dreams. Good night, Henry, I said softly, touching the frame. Your little sister loves you, misses you, and is making sure your legacy is exactly what you hoped it would be. Love multiplied, grace expanded, and miracles shared freely with anyone who needs them. And somewhere in the universe, I like to believe. My brother smiled.